And it's one more step in terms of progress in our fight against COVID.
First up at 5 o'clock, big changes on how schools will quarantine kids for COVID. This is very big news for families. Students will no longer be automatically isolated if they have contact with a classmate who is tested positive.
Now, the state is changing its approach and says kids can now stay in school and watch out for symptoms. Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Mike Savino is live right now from Newington High School with more on the big impact here. Mike, certainly a change for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And up until now, as you mentioned, if a student was unvaccinated and they had close contact with a classmate who had COVID, they would have to stay home for at least 10 days. And of course, that's a huge disruption to their learning. And it's a big problem for families and their schedules at home. But today, that is changing.
Screen and Stay brings immediate relief, and I would call it the game changer.
The Lamont administration today announced a change that will reduce the need for COVID-related quarantines. Starting today, unvaccinated students are not required to quarantine if they have close contact with a classmate who tests positive for COVID.
The idea here is that we need to keep kids in school.
Called Screen and Stay, these students can now stay in school as long as they are asymptomatic. Schools will notify families about close contacts, and those families will need to watch their kids for symptoms. No testing is required. Public health officials say that the risk of COVID spread in schools is low, and they're confident that this change is safe.
And are making a calculated risk based on data that we've seen in other states as well.
The policy change is optional, meaning a school can still require unvaccinated students to quarantine after close contact. Families can also decide to keep their kids home. But students and families think that the move is good.
I know some of my friends who are not vaccinated for whatever reason have really been adversely impacted by our previous policy.
Well, it's good for them, so they're gonna, that way they're gonna protect them, from COVID. And then also they should get vaccinated too,
Students we talked with are also confident that their classmates will monitor their symptoms and will stay home if they show signs of COVID.
I feel confident in our students to do what they need to do and help their parents do what they need to do, but there's always going to be that concern.
Now, Lamont says that his top priority remains convincing kids to get the vaccine, especially now that kids as young as 5 can get a shot. Coming up on Eyewitness News at 6, I'll tell you what Lamont said about lifting his mask mandate in schools in the future now that all students are eligible for the vaccine. Live from Newington, Mike Savino, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.